Welcome to the second installment video in the Wuthering Heights read-along. If you are not following along and just happened upon this video, you might want to get off of this one and watch one of my other amazing videos. Hey BookTube, it's Kim at Middle of the Book March. This is video number 2 in our Wuthering Heights read-along. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. We are going to be talking about the, what are we going to be talking about? Volume 2, the first 9 chapters of Volume 2. And if your book is not divided into volumes, it is chapters 15 through 23. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Oh, did it get good, right? Right? Did it get good? Kathy dies! Dun dun dun. But before she does, she at the beginning of the volume, in the beginning of this particular section of reading, Kathy is ill. She's very ill. She's, mentally going mad, as they would have said in the vernacular of that time. She is beside herself. She is grief-stricken because she feels like both Heathcliff and Edgar broke her heart because they both demanded choose between one of us, one or the other. And Edgar said, you have to choose between me and Heathcliff. And she did not want to be made to do anything. She didn't want to be forced to choose. She couldn't let either one of them go. So now she's violently ill in bed. She is delirious, and she is just having to constantly be watched and monitored. And it comes to the point where Heathcliff is desperate to see her. So he basically forces his way into her room. And finally, after he has coerced Nellie to give Kathy this letter from him, and it's the one thing that picks up her spirits, he basically barges into her room so he can see her and he can talk to her and hold her. And Kathy basically tells Heathcliff what I just said, that you and Edgar have broken my heart. You made me sick. This is your doing. You are killing me. And I highlighted a bunch of quotes. I want to read one or two here and there. But she is just going on and on about how Heathcliff and Edgar have killed her. They're murdering her. She's going to die. And Heathcliff says, is it not sufficient for your infernal selfishness that while you are at peace, I shall writhe in the torments of hell? He's basically telling her, after you die, I'm going to be in hell. When you're at peace in death, I will be in hell because I will be without you. And so there's this hot, heated anger and desire and obsession from both of them towards each other. And it's kind of like, this is really too intense to be a love story. This is too intense to be love. This is a possession. This is one person, both of them thinking they share one soul. They are the same person. So that screams possession to me, not love. So they finally, Heathcliff and Kathy, because she just leaps to him, and he catches her in his arms, and it's just, holding her and kissing her and having his hands on her, and they are just, talking to each other, and she's throwing out all these things that are, you've been cruel, you're breaking my heart, and I can't be without you, and oh Kathy, I'm going to be in hell without you, and it's back and forth. So as Heathcliff is just grasping onto her and holding her, and he's showering her with kisses, but at the same time, he says this to her: you teach me how cruel you've been, cruel and false. Why did you despise me? Why did you betray your own heart, Kathy? I have not one word of comfort. You deserve this. You have killed yourself. Yes, you may kiss me and cry and wring out my kisses and tears. They'll blight you. They'll damn you. You loved me, then what right did you have to leave me? What right? Answer me. For the poor fancy you felt for Linton, because misery and degradation and death, and nothing that God or Satan could inflict, would have parted us, you of your own will did it. I have not broken your heart, you have broken it. And in breaking it, you have broken mine. So much the worse for me that I am strong. Do I want to live? What kind of living will it be when you, oh God, would you like to live with your soul in the grave? So again, Heathcliff is referring to the two of them being one soul. And when she dies and she's put in the ground, that's where his soul is going to be as well. Oh my gosh, this is just, it's so fiery. And this woman is basically, as we learn, on her deathbed. And chapter 2 of volume 2 says, it opens with, about 12 o'clock that night was born the Catherine you saw at Wuthering Heights, a puny 7-month child. And 2 hours after the mother died, having never recovered sufficient consciousness to miss Heathcliff or know Edgar. Wow. So basically what happens is Heathcliff and Cathy are all over each other, and eventually Edgar Linton comes into the room, and Nellie is trying to get Heathcliff out of the room, and my master's coming, he's almost here, you must leave, and he doesn't. Edgar bursts into the room, and Heathcliff is holding Cathy, and he throws her at Edgar and tells him, don't be mad at me, you have to care for her, take care of her. And Heathcliff basically says, I'll leave the room, but I'm not leaving this place. I will be out in the orchard. So he's basically going to be staging kind of a death watch outside of the house. And he does. He stands there against the tree until Cathy's baby is born, and she dies 2 hours later. And I'm like, as I'm reliving this, as I'm looking at the quotes, and I've also got some notes that I'm referring to. It's like, wow, it brings it all back, doesn't it? So Nellie comes out to tell him that she has died, and he's like, he already knew. But what he also does is he's talking to Nellie, and she's trying to tell him she's gone to heaven. She is at peace. She's in a better place. All of those things that people tell a person who's grieving somebody who has died, all those things that people say to try to comfort them. And this is how Heathcliff answers. May she wake in torment, he cried with frightful vehemence, stamping his foot and groaning in a sudden paroxysm of unforgivable passion. Why, she's a liar to the end. Where is she? Not there, not in heaven, not perished. Where? And he wants to talk to her, and he says, this is one of the major quotes in the entire book. He says, you said I killed you. Haunt me then. And he's talking to Cathy, and he continues to scream to her and bellow to her. Throughout the remainder of the book, he's calling her, and he needs her. He needs to possess her. He needs her presence. Wow. But basically, it's, it goes back and forth, and right after the chapter with Cathy's dying, then we read the chapter of what happened to Isabella. Now, Heathcliff basically stole her and married her, and the only reason he married her was to take revenge against Edgar and against Thrushcross Grange. So he brings her back to Wuthering Heights, and he doesn't care anything for her. So he brings her back to this dilapidated estate with all of these, a handful of servants and the young boy Hareton. Because 6 months after Cathy died, her brother Hindley died from alcohol poisoning or alcoholism. And his little boy Hareton then becomes a ward of Heathcliff. Heathcliff has already basically stolen Hindley's son and treated him as, kind of a servant. But he also creates this little boy who works against his father. And he's kind of rough and wild and untamed. But when Hindley finally dies, Heathcliff claims Hareton officially. But so he had brought Isabella back to Wuthering Heights, and it's Hareton, it's Heathcliff, it's the servant. I don't remember his name. The old guy. I wish I could remember his name. It'll come to me later, I'm sure. But we read next chapter that Isabella has basically escaped Wuthering Heights. Heathcliff was at Cathy's death, and he is he is just to that point of grief where it's, he's almost, I'm going to say this might be sounding weird, but he's enraptured with his grief. He's sinking and he's drowning in it. And he's horrified, he is enraged, and he stays there. He stays out there, and he's just roiling in the loss and the grief. And when he finally makes it back to Wuthering Heights, Hindley and Isabella are commiserating, and he starts banging on the door. And Hindley's telling Isabella, don't answer the door. This is it. I'm finally going to kill him. I'm going to put him out of our misery, because they've kind of commiserated with each other. And so Heathcliff is trying to make his way into Wuthering Heights, and Hindley takes his gun, that special gun with the knives attached to it, and he's going to kill Heathcliff. So he goes to the window, and Heathcliff is breaking in the window, and Hindley goes to shoot him. And they struggle over this gun, and Hindley's arm gets slashed open, and he would bleed to death. So Heathcliff finally gets in the room, and Isabella has been telling him, he's going to kill you. Hindley will kill you. And so they're getting into this major brawl, and Heathcliff ends up throwing a knife or a broken piece of glass, something sharp. I'm getting the movie and the book mixed up. And so it cuts her cheek. And she finally is, throwing swears and epithets at him that you are cruel, you're evil, you're a beast. And she finally escapes. She just runs for it, and she's running for the Grange. And that's what we're reading now, is she's telling the story to Nellie, and she's finally escaped Heathcliff's brutalism and brutality and anger, and he had no love for her whatsoever. So what we now are going to be reading is a completely different change in tone from the beginning of the book. It has left the pairing of Heathcliff and Cathy, and it's gone on to the next generation. And what that did in that one chapter is the conflict has ended, because the conflict was the battle between Cathy and Heathcliff, the battle for each other's souls, and the battle that Cathy was waging emotionally with not wanting to give up either her life or the love of her life. And that once she dies, at the death of Cathy, the conflict is done. So it's almost as if the dust has settled and the fog has dissipated. So now the stage in the book that we're at is we are going to be looking at the children. So Isabella escaped to London without looking back, and she gave birth to Heathcliff's son, Linton. Now here's where the genealogy comes in handy, because all the names are the same. Catherine, and Edgar Linton, and Linton, Heathcliff's son, and it's just they're all over the place. It's hard to, without writing it down or looking at the genealogy, it's easy to get confused by that. So now we're seeing that Isabella has left for London. She has Heathcliff's son, but she dies about 12 years later. And Edgar is going to take care of the death of his sister Isabella, but he's also going to retrieve his nephew Linton and bring him back to the Grange. But of course, Heathcliff finds out. So Heathcliff finds out that he has a son, and he decides to send Joseph to the Grange to retrieve his boy. And of course, Edgar does not want to relinquish Linton, his nephew, and there's kind of an argument, and Joseph says, I am not leaving here without the boy, and they tell him, we will bring him tomorrow morning to Wuthering Heights. And that's what they end up doing. They have to get away before young Catherine has woken up. They bring Linton to Wuthering Heights, and they basically tell him, we're bringing you to your father. And he has no idea he has a father, because his mother, Isabella, never told him that his father was living. And they drop off this little Linton to Wuthering Heights, this decrepit, falling apart estate. Now, Linton is thin and sickly and whiny and irritating, and has only lived in comfort with his mother in London. So he has no idea who this man is, why he should love him at all, even if he's his father. He has no idea how to survive in the environment that he's being dropped into. And that's where Heathcliff takes over. But this is the part of the book where we see exactly what Heathcliff is capable of. His soul has turned to evil. He has all of these things that he's choreographing in his mind in order to take revenge and avenge his early life. He has taken his son. Now his son is the heir of Thrushcross Grange, because boys inherited, girls did not, unless there was something specific written in a will. But the way it is now, young Linton is the heir to the Grange. And Heathcliff knows this, but he also knows that Catherine is her father's daughter, Edgar Linton, and so what Heathcliff wants to do is join those two in marriage, so that eventually when Linton dies and Heathcliff has gotten a hold of the will, he makes sure that property of Linton goes to Heathcliff, his father. So he's basically shutting Catherine out of her land, her inheritance, and he's marrying her to his son. So he's basically taken Kathy's daughter and forcing her to marry his son. And so she's this very lively and optimistic and healthy child, and she wants to explore the moors. She's trying to coerce Nellie into exploration, and Nellie, of course, is terrified because her father, Edgar Linton, has forbid his daughter going out on the moors, leaving the land that they have at the Grange, because he is terrified that she will bump into Heathcliff. And he knows what Heathcliff is capable of. He knows the evil that he has sunk to and the depravity, which is interesting because Kathy basically said when she accepted Edgar's proposal that had she married Heathcliff, she would be degraded. And that's exactly where Heathcliff has sunk in degradation. So that was an interesting kind of comparison and contrast. So what we read eventually is that Kathy does come upon Heathcliff, and they do start to talk, and she does start to realize that everybody is related. She is kind of struck by shock that Nellie has not ever explained this, that her father has not ever talked about it. She realizes that Linton is her cousin and Heathcliff is his father, that Heathcliff was married to Isabella and he hated her. And this poor little girl, Kathy, she's kind of a teenager at this point, is just struck by the hate and the anger that is involved in her family story. And eventually she wants to go see Linton because she treated him like a brother when he was living with her, and she wanted to get to know him and to love him. And so she wants to see him. She goes to the Heights to see Linton, and she kind of does it secretly. And so they start a correspondence of letters. Now, the whole time, Heathcliff is encouraging this and orchestrating it and making sure that they're forming an attachment, because it's all in his head. He could care less of the emotions or the desires of any of the people that he's orchestrating. He is using everybody around him. He's using Nellie, he's using Catherine, he's using Linton, he's using Hareton, because he basically has possession of all of the children with any inheritance and any money and any land. They're all his. And that's exactly what he was going for. He wanted to hurt the people who hurt him, and he wanted to hurt them in the most permanent way, and he wanted to take away from them everything that he could. And in a way, he took Kathy's life. And he's taking Edgar's livelihood, and he's taking possession of their children. And he has plans for everything, but he's treating them like possessions and pawns. So, whew. So by the time we get to the end of this particular section, Catherine has been secretly going to see Linton at the Heights, and Heathcliff has been working on her. He's been talking to her about Linton and that he is sick and he's going to die, and the only thing that can cure him is you, Catherine. He's talking to her. And he's trying to sound patient and loving, and that he only has his son's interest at heart. So, and she's a naive, young, optimistic girl, so she believes that he is a good person, that he cares about his son, that he loves his son, and he only wants the best for him. So she sees nothing wrong with, kind of dodging Nellie and secretly going to see Linton at the Heights. And at the end of the section that we were reading, Catherine has blamed her father for not telling her any of this, and she doesn't believe her father when he tells her Heathcliff is an angry, evil, rageful man, and she gets angry at her father because she thinks he's lying to her. And Nellie is trying to convince her, don't go there, you're not allowed to go there, and she's doing the best she can to try to make her stop going there, but Nellie ends up getting sick, and Catherine starts to nurse her. But then at the end of the section, we start to see what's happening. And Heathcliff is talking to Catherine, and he says, "Miss Catherine, I'll own to you that I have little patience with Linton, and Hareton and Joseph have less. I'll own that he's a harsh set. He pines for kindness as well as love, and a kind word from you would be his best medicine. Don't mind Mrs. Dean's cruel cautions, but be generous, and contrive to see him. He dreams of you day and night, and cannot be persuaded that you don't hate him, since you neither write nor call." So Heathcliff is appealing to this poor girl's emotions, that he's trying to make her go see Linton because you could cure him, you could stop him from dying. And of course, there's nothing anybody can do because both her father and Nellie are home sick. And at the end of the chapter, I said her days were divided between us, but the master retired early, and I generally needed nothing after 6 o'clock. Thus the evening was her own. Poor thing, I never considered what she did with herself after tea. And though frequently, when she looked in to bid me good night, I remarked a fresh color in her cheeks and a pinkness over her slender fingers, instead of fancying the hue borrowed from a cold ride across the moors, I laid it to the charge of a hot fire in the library. So poor Nellie is sick, and Catherine's taking care of her, and Catherine's taking care of her father, and Nellie is not realizing that Catherine is taking a cold ride to Wuthering Heights every night through the moors after everybody else is in bed. So that's the end of our section. So a couple of the interesting things that I found out is the name of the estates. Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange are the two estates in the story, and wuthering is another word for the temperamental winds and the bleakness and the cold and the heights, this house on the heights. And Thrushcross Grange is cultivated and cultured and pretty and civilized. And thrush means, I had this here. Oh, here it is. The adjective wuthering refers to violent storms. The thrush is a bird known for its melodious song, as well as being a symbol of Christian piety. Heights evokes raw and imposing cliffs. Grange refers to a domestic site or a farm, as in like a gentleman farmer. So the comparison between the two places is built into the definitions of the names of the estates. And in this section of the book, we see as I said before, the depths that Heathcliff has sunk to. I mean, his only thing in mind at this point, his only goal is orchestrating revenge, and he does that by making pawns of everybody in his vicinity. Everybody serves his purpose. Everybody has a purpose in his game, and he will in his mind, he will at the end of the story have it all. He will have stolen everything for himself, and he wants to cause pain. He wants to cause devastation. So now this is definitely a different tone, different part of the book, different turn in the story. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens at the end. And from this point until Saturday, we're going to finish the book. I will finish the book on Saturday, and the last video, the concluding video for Wuthering Heights, will be posted on Sunday late afternoon, early evening. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Let me know what any of your thoughts are. If you have any questions, I probably will finish the book later tonight because I am loving this. It's just, once I'm in it, I'm in it. I'm there, and I can't get out of the setting. I've watched a couple of the movies, so I'll talk about that on Sunday as well. And I've seen pieces of some of the other movies. There's several. So let me know in the comments below, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye, everybody.